Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Gaming the System, podcast where a couple of intersectional feminists examine gaming through a feminist lens. Today, it's Matt and Jem, and we're going to be continuing our series of commentary on the Last of Us TV series. Today, it's episodes 3 and 4. So if you haven't watched any of them and you haven't played the game, definitely go and do those things first, because we'll be talking about stuff that happens in the games that doesn't happen in the TV show. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it more impactful? Ooh, we don't know. Before we start, just a reminder that we now have a shiny Patreon page, and we are releasing a special Patreon-only episode once a month. And you can find on that patreon.com/gaming the system. We've got a couple of price tiers. So if you want to support us creating more feminist gaming content, that's the place to do it. So episode 3. It was a long one. It was almost as long as the initial episode. And it's one of the most stunning bits of storytelling I've ever seen. And it was just so utterly different from the game, in that because in the game you only see Bill's skeleton hanging from Frank's skeleton hanging in his house, and you think, oh, it's just another tragedy, a gay tragedy story, which apparently is a massive trope. There's just gay relationships just end tragically because they're gay. But yeah, the whole thing from start to finish was wonderful. What did you think?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And I think it was really nice actually to see two older gay men that just follow through a story about older people. And I think especially in a show that is probably attracting quite a young audience. I think it's attracting a wide range of people, but the gaming audience, although this game is 10 years old, are probably quite young. So these men were probably a lot older than the audience, many of the audience. And I thought it was really nice actually. And I think we talked about this last time as well in the first 2 episodes, that they're taking their time, that they're really being considered and taking time to tell the story. And I just think that's great. And I think it was done in a way that made it relevant to the show without, whilst also sort of stepping out of the show, because it was their story that was being told and not Ellie and Joel's story. And I think also it was the timing of it was quite nice, because it gave us time to pause, and it gave us time to grieve the loss of, I've forgotten her name. That's how much I grieved her.
Test.
Yeah. And it gave us an opportunity to do that, an opportunity to recognize the horrendous loss that all these people in this world have experienced in this emotional story.
Yeah, it reminded me of The Walking Dead, in that they have massive long seasons, so they need episodes like this that are like backstory episodes, that you could completely not watch this episode and it wouldn't impact like
No.
the whole arc of the story. So they just clearly went, we've got an idea for this and we've got the resources to do it, so why not do it? The point about it, gay relationships have been being represented for over 10 years now that I've seen regularly, and them being not particularly a big deal. So that's as far back as I remember it being really just it's been expanding since then. But so this is an interesting phenomena in that there's always been plenty of lesbian stuff and a variety of lesbian stuff, but very little, because lesbians aren't threatening to straight men, and the phrase this properly. It feels like my impression of seeing gay male relationships is that all of them look the same. They all have a very similar body type,
Mm.
and it's usually the slim, not smooth. No,
Yeah, they're more effeminate style, more feminine. Perhaps not
yeah,
effeminate, but a more
and
feminine.
so that again comes into the part of it of it's about not being a sexual threat to what
Mm.
a straight masculine man is supposed to be.
Mm.
So there's one of those representation things. Oh, look, we've got gay couples and lesbian couples, and you go, yeah, that's good. But the reason you're only showing a particular portion of those communities, and you're going to be dragged kicking and streaming into showing more of them, the whole of them, over time. And this really felt like groundbreaking because um, it's the full gamut of a physical relationship from first kissing. I've never seen two hairy middle-aged men kiss as if they were two
Teenagers.
15-year-old,
Yeah.
yeah, two teenagers doing it for the first time.
Mm. I mean, that was what was really nice about it. Actually, was that they were very sort of manly men in their physical portrayal. As you talked about this idea, the sort of stereotypical gay man is either the sort of very feminine and non-threatening, or sort of hyper fit and hyper, that sort of hyper male. And what these two were was sort of, yeah, beardy and awkward and older and set in their ways, and confused and lost in this new world. And I think that came across really, really well and sensitively, because it wasn't gratuitous. A lot of what happened in it was not gratuitous, and in fact, in scenes where they could have gone further, they could have shown more, whether it was violence or whether it was sexual or whatever. They didn't. They stepped back from that. And yet other scenes which were um more tender and less dramatic, they gave that more space. I mean, it was just, yeah, there was just so many nice little bits in it. I think what's really interesting and is that this relationship was almost the diametrically opposed to the relationship that was actually in the game. And I was reading about it afterwards, because that this I don't remember this from the game. I remembered that it had happened, not like this, but I remembered that they had met this person, Bill. But I couldn't remember the details of it. So after watching the episode, I went and looked it up, and one thing that they were saying is that in the original game, Um, it's there's an aim to explain to the gamers, explain to the people playing the game why so many people chose to live in the protected areas as opposed to living out in the sticks like these two. And so their life was portrayed as being particularly harsh and difficult. This was the total opposite of that, because they had an almost idyllic life in this little isolated bubble of theirs. Um, and so it was almost giving the opposite story. And I think that says a lot about where we are as a society, actually, how our attitudes have shifted to how we would want to be, how things might turn out. And I mean, the biggest difficulty for them was that because they were isolated, they were unable to get the medical help that they needed, and that was probably the biggest issue for them. um that and But I think it was interesting that they decided to do this, and it's been such a key episode, and yet was not in the game, was not in this way. And I find that really interesting. I haven't read any interviews about why they chose to do this with them, and I mean, I don't know whether you have any insight into that, Matt.
No, I just fit because it's in terms of like the story of The Last of Us, it's completely unnecessary to have this stunningly beautiful hour and a half long love story. Um, but just by making it this is why diversity and representation is so important. By just taking two characters and making them an age, gender, etc., that is not well represented at all, you're instantly breaking brand new ground because
Mm.
this is one of the most popular TV shows ever. It's bringing in a massive audience from all over the world, and there will be people who have never had any like exposure uh, to middle-aged gay men in a relationship. They've only ever seen the young, toned, smooth
Yeah.
um, kind of middle-class gay men that is everywhere, and they're you're making people more comfortable around gay men who represent themselves like that. But then the most important part is you need to see the bits that you don't see so that you
Yeah.
can become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because seeing two hairy gay men lying on top of each other, I've never seen that before anywhere. And so there's that instant thing of, oh, this is a bit strange. I've never seen this
Mm.
before. But then you've got the educated part of you that goes, oh, this is just completely normal and brilliant. And it feels strange because you've never seen it before. And it's never been
Mm.
seen before because the people making stuff have always been terrified of gay men like this and think of
Yeah.
it being a threat to their own manhood, being like this. Um, so yeah, that's another
Mm.
really important element to it.
Apparently, the director said that he wanted to trick viewers into watching a gay romance. But I mean, yeah, I mean, we live in a world where you can't really be tricked into it. I know there was some kickback against it, um, but I think we've moved on from that. I think, in most of the sort of Western, it's not right to say Western, and most of the sort of Northern Hemisphere probably isn't also isn't right. Anyway, in many English speaking countries, it's it. I think we've kind of moved on from that, and we are more open to it, and the people that complain about it are a minority, a very vocal minority, but a minority. So I think the vast majority of us just enjoy a good story and enjoy watching a romance between two people, and what their gender is really irrelevant. I mean, this story could have been told equally with a man and a woman, or two women, or any combination of genders that you could come up with, and I think it would have still touched us all, and still, because that's what was so important about it, is that this was a story about two people finding each other in the worst scenario that you could imagine, and learning to care for each other, and learning to have hope, and learning to find value in life when all of the traditional things that we value have suddenly been taken away. um
I
and
think
sorry, go on.
um, I actually think it being two middle-aged gay men, it added a huge amount that isn't possible with if it had been a straight relationship or if it had been a younger relationship. Purely from the power dynamic of the first time they meet. If you've
Yeah.
got a straight man with a trapping a woman in a hole,
Yes.
that's a terrible starting point, a terrible
Yeah.
conceit. Um, and if they'd been younger, it would have been far too easy for them to do the the more tropey representation of gay people
Mm,
or lesbians. There's always going to be that voice in like from management going, make them younger, make them more attractive.
yeah. No, you're
Um,
right. Actually, you're absolutely right. um yeah, I think it was brave of them, and clever of them to do that. But that, I mean, the characters, and maybe it was just that, maybe it was something about them wanting to reimagine the characters in a different way. Like you say, the game version of their relationship was very tropey, and maybe they realized in the intervening years that and wanted to set it right, and maybe this was an opportunity to set that, to right that wrong, um in light of learning and growing. And I think there's a lesson in that for all of us as well. I think that we can actually go back sometimes and rewrite history, um for the better. So I
did you have
wondered,
a most emotional moment?
in the show, oh gosh, I mean, the last dinner scene was just, yeah, just so hard to watch. Um, I mean, it's a hard one, because I lost my father last year, the year before last, and he'd been ill for a long time, and it's, when to watch somebody go downhill, somebody that you love go downhill, is such a hard thing to do. Um, and I think it's just, it's, yeah, it touched all those nerves for me. And but it was also so tenderly done, and so kindly played out, and so and acted so well, I think, as well. So yeah, that did have me in floods of tears. But what about you?
Yeah, mine was when he said we're going to get married.
Oh yeah.
That absolutely, that is just the most beautiful thing ever.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out on Twitter or something that when the world ended in 2003, equal marriage wasn't legal. So
Yeah.
that's just another thing that the world wasn't where it is now.
No.
Um, 20 years ago.
No. No, so for those characters, that was an even bigger deal than we perhaps would have felt it
Yeah,
was. Yeah, good, good episode. It was a good episode,
yeah.
and I
And
think
then
sorry, gone.
no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think it set the scene. It as I said, it was nothing to do with Ellie and Joel in directly, but I think it gave us an opportunity to grieve Tess, and it also gave us that warning. Well, not warning, that it it allowed us to move Ellie and Joel's relationship on. That he was recognizing that she could be his meaning in life. She could be his motivation, and I think that was that sometimes having being tasked with being responsible for another human being can sometimes feel like a big hassle hanging over you, and I think as a parent, that is something it can often feel challenging and difficult and all of those things, but actually it can also give you meaning, give your life meaning, and give you motivation. And we can look at these things in multiple ways, and I think that episode helped to move that story on for their relationship. So I think that was quite positive
Yeah,
progression.
that letter at the end was a masterful piece of um, writing, because their Bill and Frank's it was Bill writing a letter to Joel. It wasn't like from the both of them. It was from Bill to Joel, and how the reason that he drank the medicine as well was because that it wasn't just that he had someone who he loved who gave his life meaning, and that he was going to not have that love anymore. It was
Mm.
because his purpose was caring for this person, and he didn't have a purpose before then, and then he found this purpose in taking care of this person,
Mm.
and pointing out that yes, that's what children can bring to a parent's life.
Yeah,
But in a normal world, there are a billion other things to engage with and care about and find purpose in. But when you're alone in the aftermath of the world ending, it's very, very, very difficult to find meaningful purpose.
yeah,
And him saying to Joel that you and I are the same, we need something to protect, otherwise we just go dark. And Joel's looking at Ellie and thinking, they just both look at each other going, oh, we understand a lot more about each other now. It's been
yeah.
put, our little problems, Joel being grumpy that he's got to carry this child, and Ellie being grumpy that she's got to be carried by this old man. They both read that and go, oh, yeah, these two old guys have really, it's like they sat us down and go,
Yeah.
now you listen to me, kids. Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, so shall we move on to episode 4?
Yeah.
Cool. So this one was a lot more standard, and I think we needed a bit of a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so as you watched it fresh last night, what did you
Yeah.
think of it?
Yeah, no, I think it felt a little bit like not a lot happened. I felt a little bit like, um, yeah, like it was a bit of a palate cleanser, and it was a bit of a setting, just doing some groundwork for what's going to happen next. Um, and I think it explored the relationship between Ellie and Joel again, in more detail again, and started to sort of bring them together a bit. Joel was acting more fatherly towards Ellie, and just little things. There was just a little bit of, care here and there of that he didn't want to expose her to too much of the challenges in the world. So she was like, oh, she wanted to see tanks and helicopters, and he was sort of like, well, you're going to see plenty of those, and it's not really so much fun. And there was just little scenes where there was a scene where they were driving along the road, and they looked at you could see Ellie looking at the car, and there was this like clearly kind of some sort of battlefield with all these tanks and things in it, and cars, and it just, yeah, it felt, there was a sort of coming of ageness about it, a sort of awareness of the realities of the situation. I mean, she's clearly been quite sheltered, has Ellie, and she stole a gun, didn't she, in the previous episode? So there was a lot about guns, and about shouldn't she have this gun, and yeah, I just really loved the scenes where she was telling Joel jokes from this book, and he was trying so hard to not engage with it, and in the end, they just had this lovely scene where they're just like both laughing their heads off, and it was right near the end of the episode, but it was so nice and so sweet, and utterly essential because of the final scene was horrible. But it was lovely that they were bonding, and they were finding this value, this hope, this meaning, which I think it just feels like that is what's underlying this. And I'm not sure that I felt that in the game, this hope, but I feel like they've laid it on with a thick knife in this series.
You see, I for one thing, the leader of the the group in the city is Rose from Two and a Half Men, so instantly I can't unsee her.
Oh,
And
see,
so
I just watch Yellow Jackets, and she's in that, and she plays
okay.
quite a slightly psychotic individual in that. And so for me, it was the
Hmm.
perfect thing, because she's got a lot of flack, actually. Kathleen, she's playing Kathleen, isn't she? She's got a lot of
Yeah.
flack because she's not as buff as the game Kathleen, and a lot of people are saying that she's not skinny enough to play the role, which
Yeah,
is
they're always going to say that. They're saying, "Oh, these two old gay men, they're too old and hairy," and you just go, "Oh, shut up, just fuck off." It made me think. I was thinking yesterday that never mind. We'll talk about that another day.
you were
Something that,
saying, yeah. Sorry, go on.
yeah. So I've been trying to put my finger on something just doesn't feel quite right, just in the show. And so the way it looks slightly, I was thinking that's a bit of it, but I think they've gone too hard. It's not violent enough. It really, they have clearly massively indulged and lent into the storytelling,
Mm,
and that feels like they've gone right. We've been moving away from the game, so it doesn't have to be so action oriented, which means that we can tell this big,
mm,
beautiful, expansive story. But the central part of what makes Joel so interesting is it's arguable that he's the biggest monster in the
mm,
world in the
yeah.
game. And that's even before before what he does at the end and the way he does it, just by the fact of you as him, you go and you brutally murder
Yeah.
dozens of people. You sneak up behind them and break their necks. You
Yeah.
stab them. You shoot them. You kill a lot of them.
Mm.
And I thought that, oh, that's just gameplay. But we haven't seen Joel in the show so far do anything unusually violent.
No. No, they did say. I did hear them saying in the run up to it being coming out. They said that it wasn't going to be as violent as the game, and the game is very violent. And I think it's really interesting because you know, exactly what you've just said about Joel and the amount of violent crimes that he commits. I had the similar thought about Ellie in The Last of Us 2, you know, because you play her for the majority of the time, and she is, yeah, she's just killing people left, right, and center. I mean, it's one thing to kill the zombie creatures, the infected people, but it's a feels to me that it should be another thing to be killing fellow humans, and yet there doesn't seem to be much um concern on Ellie's part about doing that. You know, she's just mowing people down left, right, and center, and you know, just on and on and on, and I think that is something that isn't coming through in the show. I'm not sure that that's a bad thing, but I think you're right. It does it it takes some of Joel's personality away, because but I did think, I wonder if they were alluding to that, because she asked him Ellie asked him about being deaf. She said, I noticed that you've got hearing a problem hearing in one ear, and he says, oh, it's probably from all the shooting that I've done. I think she said, you know, did you have an accident? And he said, no, it's to do it's me, all the shooting that I've done. And I think that was you know, they were alluding to the amount of violence that he has committed, and the amount, and again earlier in that conversation she'd asked, you know, had he killed good people, and you know, he hadn't wanted to talk about that. And I think that, you know, I think it's a difficult line to walk, isn't it? Because as I said, in as we've both said, in the games, the violence is constant and almost without um consideration, whereas I don't think you couldn't get away with doing that in a TV show. I think it would get a lot of criticism to be glorifying that level of violence, but that's the world they live in. You know, that's the situation they're in. So it's yeah.
Yeah, so I think it doesn't. So, it's so tricky. Basically, so straight away, I think they just there's not enough violence of any kind straight away. There and when there is violence, it's not anything shocking.
No.
And with like, if they brought the same nuance to violence as they did to the story, that would be one thing. But it feels like they're doing it very clumsily,
Mm.
because how we've seen Joel kill people, he killed that guard and beat him to death.
Mm.
But that was him losing control and punching someone to death.
Mm.
And so that's not him going into killer mode, which is what
No.
he has to do in the game. And when he looks, oh no, what have I done? That look. And then when the car crashes in the game, the first thing, a guy drags him out and tries to impale him on that big spike in of glass, and Joel goes.
Mm.
Um, so, and then in the show, he goes. There's the one guy left, and goes, "Oh, Ellie, go, don't look," and then he shoots him.
Mm.
That we've seen that a billion times as well, and it's all
Mm.
in the moral,
Yeah, yeah,
the noble grey area of violence.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas we know from what we've seen, we know that he's tortured people
yeah.
horribly. He's done brutal things that Tommy says that it wasn't worth them doing to survive.
Mm.
And when Joel says in the game he's not hurt and that he's been on both sides of those,
Mm.
it really doesn't hit the same, because in the game it feels like, oh, he's done horrifying, monstrous things.
Mm.
And also, it doesn't help that Pedro Pascal is the most lovable, fluffy bunny ever. We need to see some shocking violence from
Yeah.
him. And it doesn't have to be constant, just shock us.
Mm. Did you not find that guy begging for his life and Joe just coldly telling Ellie to go behind the wall again? I
Nah,
thought that was quite I mean not shocking, but I felt like that was quite cold. A sort of, that he wasn't interested in making her in letting this guy go or just leaving this guy there to, he was like, no, this we have to end this guy's life.
yeah, too
Too
noble,
tame.
too in that grey area. Oh, he could be a good person.
Yeah.
All everything he could do. Whereas there's a very few noble ways to brutally torture people. Um, I mean, right. So maybe they're going to do it later on, but
Yeah.
they should have had more. If they had two or even one really shocking, unique, violent things that Joel has done, they could
Mm.
be really creative. Like, do you remember Have you seen the Dark Knight, the second Christian Bale
Mm.
Batman film,
Uh,
one with the Joker?
yes.
Remember the bit when there's like a table full of the like big criminals, and the Joker comes in for the first time, and he puts a
Mm.
pencil on the table,
Mm.
and so it's on the pencil on the table there, and a guy walks up to him, and Joker just slams his
No.
head down on it. You don't
I can't
see,
watch those
yeah,
scenes. I don't like those.
yeah, and there's no blood. You don't see it go in, but that
No.
is shocking.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But later on in the game, when Ellie has been captured by David and the spoilers, cannibals, Joel captures those two guys and does
Mm.
that two-person torture thing to them, and that's what Joel's capable of. But I
Yeah.
don't, I haven't. They're just skipping that, and it's upsetting.
Mm. Mm. Yes. Well, I think you have a point. I'm no, I do agree in part, but I'm sort of loath to call for more violence because I just think, but I think perhaps, yeah, like you say, they could have done it in. I think they are alluding to it, but I think you're right. They need to be a little bit more confident in that illusion. If they don't want to show it, then they need to describe it in more clearer terms, because yeah, you're right, at the moment he just seems like a good guy caught in a difficult situation, and
Mm.
he isn't, is he? I mean, he's not a good guy. um he becomes a good guy, and that's the other thing, I suppose, that we might lose in this is that sort of is that Ellie rescues him. Over time, Ellie rescues him. Yeah, as much as he rescues Ellie, she rescues him, and that story will be diluted if we don't understand how lost he
Mm.
is.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
yeah, so maybe it's be interesting to see whether if they do I suppose I don't know how many episodes are there in the whole season. Is it
It was
10?
only 8.
8. So we're halfway through them.
Mm.
Okay.
I
A
just,
lot
I
could
just,
happen.
it to the way it ends in the game is one of the most shocking things ever, and
Mm,
for it to have the biggest impact, you do need to know, yes, how lost is Joel
mm,
before he meets Ellie, to the
mm.
extent that he does what he does,
Yeah.
to not just be him. Oh, I went crazy and I did it.
Mm,
That's not how it is in the game. He goes into complete cold killer mode.
yeah.
When he gets up and he shoots that guy in the stomach
Mm,
twice to get
mm.
him to tell where it is. And I really hope they don't just put it into, oh, he's just a good guy who went crazy trying to save his new daughter. And, oh, yes, but I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to it.
I'm sure we will.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, other than I think we should talk a little bit about how the problems that people have had with with Kathleen's casting. And I think that actually it was really nice to see somebody who appears to be a relatively ordinary woman, again an older woman, and she's in, she's sort of risen to a position of power in this group. We don't know very much about them at this point in the story, and I think it's just a real shame that the first kind of solid female character other than Ellie in there is immediately being challenged on how she looks. She's not attractive enough. It's like, well, it's got nothing to do with how you look. Your ability to lead a group of angry people is it really doesn't matter how you look. And I think if she'd been a male character, I don't think they would have done the same argument. So, I think that's a
The thing I thought about saying earlier, I thought it's come up organically again, is the people who say that are the ones that we're used to it being attractive women
yeah,
when we watch things. I want there to be attractive women, and it makes me think of it's privileged people going, I don't care how much it hurts other people. I want what
yeah,
I want.
yeah,
And I've been thinking about stuff like transphobic people and how they're the same people as people 60 years ago in America saying, but black people and white people can't use the same bathrooms. I
mm,
can't eat it. I only want to eat with white people. And then
yeah,
the government, it gets to a stage where the government has something that goes, no, we're making laws so you're not allowed to do that anymore.
yeah,
Okay? That's the extent it needs to be.
yeah,
And so developers like this just need to keep on going. If you don't want to watch it, then go away. It doesn't get to
yeah,
be only what you want now. You're
yeah,
making
yeah. Absolutely. But for the record, I think Melanie Linsky is gorgeous, and I also think she's an excellent actress. And I did really enjoy watching her in Yellow Jackets, which I would recommend. It's my most recent obsession. So yeah, but we're talking about The Last of Us.
yes. Well, it won't. It's not as it doesn't count as a spoiler, but we have not seen the last of Kathleen.
No.
So, yeah. So yes, we will have a chance to talk about her in depth, and you can tell me all about Yellow Jackets. Cool. Right. In that case, everyone, thank you for watching or listening. And we've been Matt and Jem. We'll see you every Thursday at 7 p.m. Until next time, bye bye.
Bye.